NHS, as we know, is an important national institution, and on Wednesday, some been trade discussions between the UK and the US around the NHS.
There is no way the Green Party would be willing to get anywhere near a trade deal that weakened the position of the NHS as being publicly funded. But beyond that, Green Party MP Caroline Lucas put forward a restoration of the NHS bill to Parliament, where she was very clear that the Health and Social Care Act that the Conservatives passed should be repealed because it took away the duty on the Secretary of State for Health for making sure that adequate provision for health was made.
The Labour Party established the NHS. We will not let it be sold. It is not for sale. We've talked about people who take action. I have protested against potential privatisation of the NHS, both in the streets of London and outside the NHS. And politically, in Luton, with the leader of the council, Hazel, we have politically withdrawn from the STP or the ICS, Integrated Care System, or whatever they've decided to call it this week, because we can see that that is going to be a model for privatisation by the back door. So if you want action, we're already taking it and standing up. One of the things the Labour Party is already campaigning against is the way that the NHS is just being broken up into little pieces, into subsidiaries, to make it easier to sell off and to privatise.
As a former care worker who worked for a privatised company who actually delivered NHS care as well as care for private patients, I have first-hand experience of how these care companies put private patients above NHS patients. I firmly endorse everything that Rachel said, and I just want to say that the Labour Party and myself will never put profit above people, because the NHS and healthcare should be based on need and not the ability to pay.
The NHS will never be privatised. Full stop. End of story. Okay, I know you find... I'm sorry you find that funny, but it's a statement of fact. And here's why it's a statement of fact. The Prime Minister has said on numerous occasions it is completely out of the question that the NHS will be privatised.
As far as L&D Hospital is concerned, I'm not sure if it was a policy, if it was a Labour position last election or not, that hospital was under threat. It's still there. It's had £100 million of investment, and there's a new acute block going into place. There's a commitment in the Conservative manifesto to recruit or retain 50,000 more nurses.
We're glad you made that clarification.
6,000 more GPs. 6,000 more GPs. 20 hospital upgrades, out of which L&D is one. 40 new hospitals, 6 have started. £34 billion commitment to the NHS.
Okay, you're moving on the list.
Nurses bursary restored.
No.
£1 billion social care fund. Hospital
I
parking
think
charges
you made
removed.
your point. You made your point.
I've been in Parliament for the last 10 years. I've opposed every move towards privatisation over that period of time. I've backed every ability to increase the money going in, because I understand that for a community like Luton, it's not just about health, it's about inequality. It's about being able to do the things that normally you would want to do if you had... It's one of the worst forms of inequality. But let me just say this. In the next Parliament, the reason why the NHS, regardless of what is being talked about right now, will be on the table is because we are pursuing a Brexit, which will force us into trying to find a trade deal with the United States. The USA wants two things. The first thing they want is access to our market so they can pump in cheap food. The second thing they want is a slice of the £120 billion or so that we spend on the NHS.
I agree with what Gavin said about what happens if we go ahead with Brexit, because that's actually what puts us at risk. We have two men who have a tenuous relationship with the truth. Donald Trump in America, what's his name? Boris, is it, in this country? And I don't trust either of them, because from where I sit, they're not interested in us. They don't have to worry about using the NHS. They don't have to worry about using public services. Now, I have had a lifelong opposition to privatising public services. And I'll tell you why, it's not ideological, it is pragmatic. Because if you privatise a service, what happens? If you're a private company, you have to make a profit. Your shareholders are the people you're working for. So if you have to make a profit, how do you do it? You either cut the service or you cut the terms and conditions of the people that work within that service.
Every time election comes, what I hear, all the big parties, they distribute their freebies like it's a Christmas. And they forget about it next 5 years. And what it is, as a Brexit party, what we are saying is, yes, you can give away, but where the money is going to come. So our contract is we're going to raise 200 billion first by scrapping HS2, keeping 13 billion from EU contributions, recovering 7 billion from EIB, and redirecting 50% of 440 billion over 5 years. So first we need to get money to do anything you promise, because this is as a business. Because we can promise, you sky and don't deliver anything till next 5 years, you are stuck with it.
None of them is seriously talking about the real issue. The real issue in NHS right now, the way we use it, in Luton, if you try to make an appointment with a doctor and your child is ill, you will get 4 weeks' time or 5 weeks' time. And this is a big issue for me. What we need to do is, rather than political rhetoric on privatization, we need to take immediate steps, and frontline staff needs to be increased. Right now, we have shortage of nurses, and nurses have big issue with pay. A lot of them, they leave this country because they find better jobs abroad. Second issue we have in a place like Luton, which none of them realize, because they never seen poverty, because majority of our community lives in poverty. And when you are poor, it's more likely you're going to be sick. So what we need is in NHS right now, rather than talking about big issue, is to increase the frontline staff, okay, make more doctors and more nurses available,